I've previously said in many videos that High Elves generally don't have the best armor piercing, and while that is largely true, that is discounting this particular unit of elf women right here. Of course, Sisters of Avelorn with their magic, ethereal-looking bows here, armor piercing, fire, magic damage. We're going to be taking a look at this replay from Killerinu. He's got just the one unit of Sisters of Avelorn up against Vampire Coast. We've got High Archmage here up on the Eagle, using that Armor of Stars to stay hidden, do some scouting. Looks like Apotheosis, Tempest, and Soul Quench. I've got a couple of Handmaidens. They're anti-large in melee. Again, armor piercing, kind of fire, magic damage at range. Couple Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers, some Spearmen, Dryads. As this is the Avelorn faction, we've got White Lions, some Reavers. On the Vampire Coast side, I believe this is Gobbo Slayer playing Vampire Coast. We've got a couple of Carronades and Nocti Boy up on the Necrofex. Queen Bess, some Ethereal Sirens out to the flanks. Got some Scurvy Dogs, plenty of mobs and grenades as well. You can see that Soul Quench coming in, doing some pretty solid damage against Queen Bess. So a little bit of an initial artillery fight here. This bolt thrower definitely taking the sour end of things, just getting absolutely wrecked. Queen Bess, danger close, landing on the crew of the bolt thrower, doing some nice damage, but this isn't the most cost-effective target for Queen Bess to be shooting at necessarily. There is a Gunnery White to refill ammunition here, so that is if Queen Bess can survive. At this point, the bolt throwers are actually trading pretty decently into the Carronades, though. You can see two models down there. No, it looks like that one is actually still online, so two models online there, one down. So we'll fast forward somewhat through this early game kind of artillery fight as, you know, we're mostly here to talk about the sisters, but as they are fighting, we can talk about a little bit about what makes the sisters special. A little bit of a tongue twister there, so yeah, we've got some regular archers mixed in here, which is a pretty good play. The sisters are pretty expensive, but pretty good armor-piercing missile damage, 180 range as well is also fantastic. 9-second reload time, 18 armor-piercing, and 4 base. 18 armor-piercing is really, really good. I think that's the same... I don't know, I'd have to look at handgunners again. We'll compare their missile damage to like handgunners and Waywatchers and so on, but I think that is very, very good. Their melee stats are also pretty decent, especially with martial prowess active. 50 melee defense and 38 melee attack. I mean, 50 melee defense in particular, pretty good. Still only 40 armor, so you definitely don't want them taking charges from units which deal a lot of shock damage, like cavalry and chariots. But in a sustained fight, especially against lower tier chaff, like you know, zombie summons, clan rat summons, whatnot, they will fight just fine. They'll be able to hold their own and won't take too much damage in those types of fights. Obviously not great for them being tied down, but the fire damage is also something to consider. In a lot of matchups, you get advantage from fire synergy with techless with Kindle Flames, especially. I mean, net Kindle Flame, you know, mass fire shooting. Yeah, mass shooting with the fire arrows from the sisters, like powerful classic combination with the sisters. Since Kindle Flame, techless gives net Kindle Flame on his nets, rather. Sorry, a little bit tongue-tied today. My apologies, guys. But anyway, these doggos come forward. Kind of have a little bit of a mobile engagement. Reavers doing some pretty good damage, and the magic damage will definitely come into play here against these Sirens, obviously. They are ethereal, so high physical resistance. A lot of people have misconceptions about how the fire damage literally doesn't matter at all here. It's magic damage is the only interaction because there's no weakness to fire or fire resistance. If you were to cast something that procced Kindle Flame, then the fire would be added into this equation, and they would actually be, you know, 0% physical resistance because of the magic damage, and then 22% weak to fire, so they would actually be, you know, a plus 22% damage taken overall. But some really nice volleys there, just a few volleys doing a ton of damage to those Sirens. Meanwhile, the Archmage here diving down. A lot of Scurvy Dogs. There's a very heavy presence of Scurvy Dogs. Looks like they got the better of the Reavers eventually. In terms of artillery, both players basically trade their artillery. You can see Queen Bess eventually does succumb. I didn't quite highlight it. You guys might have seen it in the background there to the Soul Quench. Another Soul Quench going to be fired in here at the last Carronade. Oh man, even though it blasts through the skeletons, does actually somehow make contact there pretty impressively. Yeah, so no more artillery for the Vampire Coast, and that's never a good position to be in. I say no more artillery. Count Noctilus, of course, is still artillery. But, yeah. So at this point, there's not really a lot of counter-skirmish for the Sisters of Avelorn. They can come in and just do a ton of damage to whatever targets they choose, more or less. The only thing that's really a danger to them at this point is Count Noctilus himself. But, you know, all that needs to happen is they need to just move up and take him out. Artillery being pretty cautious, though, just taking out the bombers first and so on. So let's continue to fast forward here as the bolt throwers use up the last of their ammunition. Dryad's going to come forward and just eat up that zombie crew. Eventually, just the archers come forward, and yeah, I mean, you don't even really necessarily need these melee units right off the bat. But as an example, like these scurvy dogs, right? They have 26 attack and 24 charge bonus, so they're literally hitting for 50 attack on the charge, right? Because charge bonus and melee attack, you add the charge bonus to melee attack on the charge, as well as weapon strength. So, just as an example there, that 50-50, right? It's you're just at your base hit chance, which is 35% chance to hit with that 50 effective melee attack versus the 50 defense of the Sisters of Avelorn, while they have martial prowess. And as a result, like, just standing up to kind of that incidental damage that happens in a lot of battles, they are going to be much better in here. Those look like Sisters. Oh man, that's... Yeah, the Hounds didn't actually have an attack order on them, it looks like. Instead, just charging into the White Lions there. The Archers kind of, yeah, getting screened very well by the White Lions, but we're here to watch the Sisters, watch their arrows light up these sirens, and this is, again, just amazing value, especially in a build where you don't bring Alariel, right? Because Alariel gives AoE magic damage. You're going to need some kind of magic damage against an ethereal faction, so even though the armor piercing, I mean, here it would be good against crabs. It's going to be decent against Noctilus. I mean, he only has 70 armor, 75 armor, so regular archers are effective enough against him, but obviously it does help to have that little bit of armor piercing. But yeah, both units of Sirens just getting absolutely worked by the Sisters. As a result, they just, yeah, actually haven't got that much value, surprisingly, yet. But there's still plenty of high-value targets for them to try and take out. The Bombers actually come forward and do some pretty decent work. Bombers deal fire damage, and so the Dryads will be taking bonus damage from that. You can see the little fire symbol by their ammunition there. Something not a lot of people know. Scabscrath as well on the White King. Super strong tool. Just absolutely wrecks this unit of spearmen. Tears through the center, so you can see why he brought up the melee infantry so late. I mean, doesn't really do a lot in this situation besides just die slowly. And the Hound Swarm, credit to Gobbo Slayer for keeping these scurvy dogs alive. They're getting close to their healing cap. It's not often that you see that, even though I think that it's honestly a pretty decent play is just to spam heals on those doggo blobs. But Sisters at this point do get a little bit of an apotheosis, trying to keep some of their models online. They're retreating away from the Hounds while the characters try and come bail them out. Some of the Hounds have detached to chase some other routing units, but we'll see. They should be able to hold up okay as long as they keep their martial prowess online, especially with the heroic support. Looks like those scurvy dogs do eventually peel and go after the archers there. But some other higher value targets potentially coming in range. Got some other doggos here. Get a nice rear charge. That will help out bypass that higher melee defense. You can see the Sisters do drop their martial prowess. 36-38, still pretty decent in terms of melee stats, but definitely not as good. Apotheosis coming in there, trying to get them back up to snuff. But the Hound presence pretty effectively shut down by the heroes here. Nice little charge down from the Archmage as well, but Noctilus still online. Gunny also dropping some snipes in here at these characters. A little bit of a bombardment from Noctilus. And the White Lions also pushing through. The Bombers use up the last of their ammunition there. A little bit of enhanced ballistics from Gunny. But finally, the Sisters of Avelorn are able to get in range here. And yeah, they're actually not firing Noctilus right now. That's the two handmaidens. They're doing a little bit of poke. Maybe shooting the gunnery white, in fact. But yeah, now here's what we're looking for. Sisters turn and fire on Noctilus, and this is just absolute value. In fact, I'll keep the health bars up so you guys can see how much damage they're going to do here. And keep in mind, they're about half strength, right, in terms of damage output. They're only 33 out of 60 models, a little over half strength in terms of missile damage output. But, yeah, it's still pretty good. I mean, maybe not as much burst as you would like to see, but a nice Scav Scrat there. Does deal lots of HP damage, but doesn't actually kill any unit models, pretty impressively. So, they're able to hold up somewhat against that. Noctilus trying to use up some more zombie summons. Obviously, he's got the poop deck summon from the Necrofex, but the Sisters just hanging tight, keeping that DPS up. And this is the real value where, you know, that gets generated. It's still very, very close, though. I mean, Noctilus could certainly try and pull it out here. The terror of Noctilus, especially in the late game. None of these units are immune to psychology, right? Sisters certainly aren't. Thankfully, they can easily outrun summon zombies. 36 speeds, not blazingly fast, but it's kind of pretty decent overall. Certainly faster than zombies, so some nice screening from the spears there, and they get free. Handmaiden coming in the late game. Handmaidens definitely beat Gunnery Whites in melee. I mean, they have clearly superior stats, you know, kind of regardless of the anti-large. Don't know if I've ever watched these two fight on foot. It's quite a janky fight, has to be said. But Noctilus says, you know, stay away from my Gunnery White friend. If you could please stop bullying him, he needs to feed me some more ammo potentially here. And, you know, the elf says in response, well, look at these sisters over here. They have plenty of ammo left, along with a handful of archers. Try and finish the job, although the handmaidens themselves are out. I would love for more factions. I know it's kind of unique, very unique, actually, for Vampire Coast to refill ammo, but I honestly would like to see that on some other factions. I don't know about High Elves. Maybe make a Lithnar a little bit more fun and different, but I don't know. I'm just kind of musing at this point. Sisters, trying to maintain their range. They do not fire while moving, unlike something like, say, Glade Guard, but looks like they're going to charge these pistol zombies at this point. This is definitely the right call. I mean, pistol zombies, absolutely terrible stats. They're much more dangerous just shooting the sisters in the face, so nice little charge here. They whip out their little side swords. Little, I don't know, what would you call them? They're not really side swords. They're pretty broad, actually. Kind of short, though. I don't know. You sword aficionados out there, what would you call these things? I know you probably haven't got a great look at them, but there you go. A little bit hard when they're twirling around like that. At this point, though, army losses kicks in. They actually did use up all their ammunition there, and in the late game were able to generate some really nice value shooting at Noctilus, so, you know, shutting down the Sirene super hard. I actually thought there were 2 units of Sirenes, but yeah, I guess just the one that got healed back up, which makes more sense now. But yeah, 2,000 damage value on them, which is, I mean, if they are able to fire consistently at high-value targets, they will absolutely pay for themselves. Illarina did send me a few other replays as well. If I have time when I get back from my vacation, perhaps I will do a big multicast of Sisters of Avelorn just to kind of tie this discussion together even more, talk about them even more. But yeah, fun stuff. Love the build here for the Avelorn faction, making use of the Dryads, both doing a decent job here, especially this one. 179 kills, not bad at all. Spearmen kind of doing their thing. The Handmaidens also love the pick here as well. High Archmage generating tons of damage value, and yeah, slinging those spells around despite being relatively cheap. I actually do like that pick as well quite a bit. Reavers had a bit of a tough time. The Bolt Thrower was a little bit of a mixed bag, but Noctilus, I mean, without too much opposition here, he gets an insane amount of value on his Necrofex. The cannons kind of trading into the Carronades, which is not wildly cost-effective for them. Queen Bess also was a little bit of a tough play there against the Soul Quenches, but really nice value on the Doggos. Have to say, great Doggo play from Gobbo Slayer. And the Bombers also contributing decently. I mean, deckhands are mostly just here to die, so that's fine. But anyway, let's talk a little bit more. We didn't see any direct synergy, but I did talk about Techless Nets, kind of the classic combination. In terms of other, you know, synergies, I mean, obviously you have the regular Kindle Flame with just the lower fire caster. There's not really any direct synergies in terms of the spells themselves, but You've got these Everqueen's Court Guards as well, Regiment of Renown. Didn't see them here. I might make a video about them separately, but they just give you additional wins in magic. Power Reserve specifically is always very good. Recharge rate, kind of less so, but it's nice to have. But especially for somebody like, you know, a non-heroic caster like Techless, you can actually take them with Techless, and it's just ridiculous overkill because you have more wins in magic than you can realistically spend, unless you're playing like a very, very long match. But even somebody like Alariel for additional Earthbloods, or if you have a non-Lord level caster, you know, like these regular mages down here, just a nice way to kind of get some extra wins of magic. But, I mean, from a kind of ability synergy standpoint, on paper at least, they synergize best with Techless. Interesting. But the armor-piercing kind of fire magic is definitely what you're there for. The ROR also has Encourage, but just to kind of compare to some other armor-piercing missiles. Obviously, I talked a little bit about handgunners. Handgunners are definitely a lower tier overall, but even like the ROR here that also has magic damage, right? In terms of missile damage output, you can see the 18 missile damage, 18 armor-piercing missile damage is, yeah, actually the same between the two of them. So, actually literally the same missile damage, but the handgunners, I would imagine, have quite a bit slower of a reload time. Yeah, even the ROR only has a 9.1 second reload time, whereas the base Sister of Avelorn has a 9-second reload time, right? So the missile damage is the same, but the reload rate much faster baseline. Accuracy, it's a little bit hard to compare. I'd have to do some very solid testing, but the arc of fire is certainly a difference. Handgunners and gunpowder units in general tend to be more accurate shooting at flying units because the missile speed is faster, but the Sisters of Avelorn and, you know, other bow type units can obviously fire an arc over their own lines. Handgunners sometimes are not able to. Way Watchers, excuse me, a little bit more missile damage, but they do have a slower reload rate, and Way Watchers also have less unit models. Sisters of Avelorn, 60 unit models, a little bit lower than the base 68 of a lot of skirmishers, but still more than something like Way Watchers. A little bit hard to compare just because Way Watchers are definitely a very different role. You know, Vanguard, stock, 360 shooting, but both very long-range armor-piercing missiles, so there is perhaps some comparison to be made there. Yeah, what else can I say about Sisters of Avelorn? You'll hopefully see them more coming up. They've kind of fallen out of the meta a little bit in a lot of ways, but I think now, because the bracing changes, you can actually keep them protected better than you were able to before. They might start coming back around. There was a while when they first came out with the DLC, with Alariel's DLC, that Sisters were kind of the meta in multiplayer for a long time. They've always kind of been meta in campaign, to be honest. They're insanely good in campaign, but yeah, in multiplayer, they've kind of fallen out a little bit, but you definitely see them occasionally, and even so, like, heavy sister builds, like a few that Kilrainu has sent me that I may end up showing you guys later, even go heavy into, like, 4 sisters or more. A lot of spend for a thin high elf army. You kind of have to cut some corners in other areas of your army, but it is a very, very scary, heavy missile presence, for sure. And a lot of people have kind of forgotten about that, so here's your reminder. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.